Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sparkrock's latest webinar. Today, we are going to be covering Built for Impact, Smarter Expense Management for Nonprofits in K-12, where you'll be learning all about expense management, credit card reconciliation, and about Microsoft's new initiative called Elevate. Here's our agenda for the day. We are going to do some quick introductions, highlight the new Microsoft Elevate initiative, talk about Sparkrock, the company, then go into expense management within Sparkrock Impact, have a half-hour demo, and then have some Q&A time and closing. A quick set of housekeeping. We will be sharing this webinar within 5 business days, so if you have to leave early, you have to send it to a colleague who wants to review it. If you want to review it later, you'll have it in your inbox. And now, time to meet the team. I'm Bree Ramsden. I'm the marketing manager at Sparkrock, and I'm going to help read out a few slides about Microsoft today and run the Q&A, but the real stars are Gary and Wendy. So Gary, take it away.
Oh, your microphone.
You're muted. Oh, no. It always happens.
Oops, sorry about that. Thank you, Bree. Hello, everyone. I am very excited to be here and just to say a few words about myself. I am a senior account executive at Sparkrock. Been working in the ERP space for over a decade now, actually, helping both nonprofit and for-profit organizations finding the right finance and HR solution. And in the past few years, I've decided to focus exclusively on the non-for-profit, and this is how I ended up joining Sparkrock.
All right. Well, I will introduce myself. I'm Wendy Brown. I'm the pre-sales consultant here at Sparkrock. I've been helping organizations just like yours since 1997 with technology solutions to reduce the impact of processes that might be paper-based and moving to digital experiences. So I look forward to sharing what we have to offer your community today.
Now, to start out, we did want to share the new initiative. We partner with Microsoft, which is very exciting. And earlier this year, they announced Microsoft Elevate. Now, before nonprofit and K-12 used to be separate, but for us, this was very exciting since we work with both. And they have put them together to focus on putting people first. Now, Microsoft Elevate, when we focus on this, our Microsoft peers are at an event, so they asked me to share this with you. They wanted their new initiative, Microsoft Elevate, to be shared. Microsoft mission has always been to empower every person and every organization on the planet. They want them to achieve more. So they created Elevate. It builds on that by expanding opportunities, earning trust, protecting fundamental rights, and advancing sustainability. The main focus is ensuring technology and AI is going to be a force for good. They want to create a lasting impact across communities and sectors, which is why they're grouping nonprofits, human and health services, K-12 all together. Now, this quote gets to the heart of what Microsoft's approach for Elevate is. It asks an important question. Are we building machines to replace people, or do we want to help them thrive? Microsoft's answer is clear. They're trying to put people first. Rather than focusing on creating AI that's going to outsmart humanity, Elevate is about advancing AI in a way that supports, empowers, and elevates individuals and communities. So Microsoft Elevate's mission is to bring the power of AI to social impact organizations and educational institutions across the globe. That's a vision that connects directly with what we do. Our platforms, Sparkrock Finance and Sparkrock Impact HRP, are built on top of Microsoft Dynamics, which means that our customers and anyone else who uses Microsoft get to benefit from the same foundation that Microsoft is investing in Elevate. Together, we're going to help schools, nonprofits, harness the power of AI and make a difference. And here's a whole bunch of statistics they sent over, and this is just the start. They've committed over $4 billion in donations of cash and AI cloud technology. They also are opening up the Elevate Academy, and they aim to help 20 million people earn AI credentials by 2027. This is ensuring students, educators, and changemakers have the skills they need to use AI as it becomes more prevalent. And with the launch of an AI Economy Institute, they're creating a think tank that bridges the gap between technological innovation and real societal impact. And here's the stats that really hone down why they decide to do this. 60% of the global workforce is going to need new digital skills, and 3 out of 4 young people don't have the skills they need for the AI economy. Just think about all the different words that you're putting into ChatGPT. Do you know how to get the best answer out of it? And that's why Microsoft Elevate's commitment is so important. So here's a sneak peek into us. We do a little bit of AI here, which I'm sure our team can talk about, whether that is through Copilot for searching through HR documents, looking at budgets, scenario planning, asking the system what approvers are causing any late approvals coming through. We can do quite a bit. So with that, I want to pass it over to Gary to actually talk about Sparkrock, and I'm going to sneak away.
Thank you, Bree. All right. So as part of my role, I get to chat with prospect every single day. Let me just remove that out of the way, right? And when we sit and talk with many executives, the CFO, the director of finance, and so on, that reach out to us looking for a new ERP solution, of course, they talk about the issues, the difficulties, the headache, right? All those things that keep them up at night, right? All the challenges, the pain that they are going through, and looking for ways to solve, right? And this is what led us to today's conversation around smarter expense management, and more specifically around credit card reconciliation and employee expense claim. But before we jump into the topic and break it down for you, I'd like to talk a little bit about Sparkrock and who we are. And this is mainly for those of you that are not familiar with Sparkrock, right? To give you more context on what we do, how we do things, and why we are best positioned to solve those challenges that we are going to discuss during this session. Right, so today, Sparkrock is an organization with 135 dedicated employees and more than 100,000 users all across North America. We actually started a little over 20 years ago as we identified a gap in the market when it comes to non-for-profit and K-12 organization. And back then, it was an underserved market, to say the least, right, with very unsophisticated product. And this is how Sparkrock was born in 2003, right, really from this desire to provide better solutions to the community. And in order to achieve this goal, we looked for the best possible partner. And this is why we decided right from the beginning to partner with Microsoft. And when most people think about Microsoft, they do not think about ERP system, right? But Microsoft actually has been a big player in the ERP market for over 30 years. And of course, over time, over the past decade, Microsoft solution evolved through technology and through innovation, of course, right? And as they evolved, as they grew, right, so did we. So today we are built on top of Microsoft cloud solution called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, and some of you may be familiar with it, right? And as you can see from the picture here, how solution sits and lives within the Microsoft Dynamics 365 environment. And you probably wonder, okay, well, what are you adding to the Microsoft ecosystem? Right? What makes your solution so unique? What we find with our experience is that when you work with nonprofit organization, K-12 organization, right, is that Business Central, actually like any solution that are designed for for-profit organization, are missing key functionalities that organizations like yours really need. And Business Central it's a great solution for businesses, right? But businesses are focused on the revenue coming in the organization. They will be on top of their sales, on top of their margin, their inventory maybe, right? But if you think about nonprofit, you generally have fewer source of revenue. The bigger chunk of that revenue as you're receiving your grant, you're receiving your donation, right? So nonprofit are focused on the expenses, the money going out of the organization. It's all about how you spend that money, making sure that every cent is properly accounted for, well, especially since you must report back to your funders, right? So you have to think about requirements around requisition, around invoice approval, around commitment and encumbrances, right? Around project and grant accounting, around specific report, right? Those complex regulatory reports that you have, but that do not exist for the for-profit organization. And this is actually why the typical ERP solution do not work for nonprofit and K-12 organization, right? And those that end up using those tools that were specifically designed for businesses end up wasting a lot of time and resources and having to implement a lot of manual processes. So in short, what we did is that we look at the level of sophistication that a solution like Business Central has on the revenue side, and we bring the same high level of sophistication on the expense management side. And actually, before we came along and founded Sparkrock 20 some years ago, nonprofit organization and K-12 organization had pretty much the choice between one, the well-established, well-known general purpose ERP solution designed for businesses. And as we just discussed, this is not ideal at all. And two, the niche ERP solution built specifically for not-for-profit organization, right? And why this seems better, because, well, they have the features, they have the functionalities that you need. Unfortunately, those niche solutions are not as robust and as well developed as a solution available for businesses, right? Because, well, in many cases, those are just small business startups. And worse, they lack the stability and security that large organizations could offer. So with Sparkrock, what we do is that we bring together in one side all the security and stability of the Microsoft infrastructure, right? And on the other side, the sector-specific expertise of Sparkrock with all the features, the functionalities that are specific to the need of nonprofit and K-12 organization, right? So really, we are the best of both worlds. What we bring to the table is really that capacity to leverage Microsoft investment in Business Central, which is significant because, well, Microsoft literally invests millions of dollars in its solution, right? And of course, it is Microsoft cloud infrastructure, but it's also the privacy, the security, the features, the functionality, the interconnectivity within the Microsoft environment itself, right? You have to think about Office 365 with Word, Excel, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, Power Apps, right? And of course, now the AI technology with Microsoft Copilot. And when you put together that ability to leverage Microsoft with our specialized capability and features, you really understand why we have been so successful in the K-12 and nonprofit space, and how we can actually help you to focus on your mission. So, all right, so now that you understand what we do and also understand why many organizations come to us seeking for solution, let's now narrow it down to today's topic. When we discuss with those organizations, just like yours, right, we hear about the pain, the challenges that they are trying to solve, right? And of course, there are different organizations with different challenges, right? But whether they are coming from an outdated legacy system or from a modern system that was not specifically designed for nonprofit and K-12 organization, there is always a common theme, right? And that common theme is manual process. And when I say manual process, I'm sure that you can picture all the issues that come with it, right? In terms of repetitive work, duplicate work, risk of errors, lack of transparency, right? Which ultimately led to inefficiencies, waste of time, waste of resources, and so on, right? And typically, the usual suspect, I would say, right? The areas that involve the most manual work are the one that you see here on the screen. Reporting, budgeting, employee reimbursable expense, purchase to pay, and credit card reconciliation. So let's go over each of those very, very quickly. The first one here is reporting, right? So very often you have the finance team scratching their head, right? Dealing with many different solutions and systems that do not communicate with each other, right? That are from the accounting system, spreadsheet, bank statement, payroll system, right? that they need to reconcile and make sure that the data align, right? And of course, they need to prepare financial reports for various stakeholders. And when you have to do all this manually, well, this is intense, time consuming, and present important risk of errors. Another area that is also intense, time consuming, and prone to error is budgeting. So budgeting is typically a collaborative process, right? And gathering and manually compiling data from different departments, the program manager, HR, and so on, right? Often involve multiple emails, phone calls, spreadsheet, right? So this not only increase the chance of mistake and error, but it also make it hard to track revision and feedback from different stakeholders, right? And with such system, where there is lack of visibility, right, your program manager are more likely to overspend, and we don't want that. The third area here on the list is the employee reimbursable expense, right? We come across many organizations where employees typically submit their expense report via email or paper, right? And often this is done without consistent formatting, requiring the finance team to manually review receipt, categorize expense, and ensure that they align with the organization policy. And this process, well, is once again time consuming, right? Particularly if you have a large volume of submission. And of course, it increases the probability of errors, missed receipt, misclassified expenses, and so on. The fourth area on the list here, we have purchase to pay workflow, right? The finance team must track and process purchases, approvals, invoice, and payments, right? And all of this while they still need to ensure compliance with donor restriction, grant requirement, and budget limitation. And without an automated system, right, purchase requests are often submitted via email or paper copy, leading to approval delay, miscommunication, and difficulty to maintain clear audit trail for accountability. And again, this will increase the risk of errors, duplicate payment, and missed invoice, right? And lastly, we have the credit card reconciliation, right? So matching credit card transaction with receipt and ensuring that all the charges are properly categorized and coded, of course, take a lot of time and effort when you have to do all of this manual, especially if you have like a decent volume of transaction and multiple corporate credit cards to reconcile. All those 5 items here have something in common, right? They are all labor intensive, time consuming, and prone to error. And they all slow down the decision-making process due to lack of visibility and due to lack of real-time data. It is very important for us to understand what matter and what resonates for most of the organization, right, when they come to us seeking for solution. So what we did is that we recently run a poll on manual process to understand which of those 5 areas were the most critical. And of course, organizations are typically impacted by all of those processes, right? But we try to identify the one that have the most negative impact. So the question was, what is the most challenging manual process? If you had a magic wand and you could pick only one, right, and just one, which manual process would you eliminate? Credit card reconciliation, purchase to pay workflow, budgeting, employee reimbursable expense, or financial reporting? And here is the result. And as you can see on the screen, the main challenge was by far credit card reconciliation with 34% of the vote. So pretty significant, right? 1/3 of the participant, followed by employee reimbursable expense with 21% of the vote. So those two were clearly the main concern for most organizations. But really, if I had to describe those manual processes that we are hearing from many prospects, right? And you are probably also in one of those situations as well, you will have to think about all the work, all the steps, all the Excel spreadsheet, all the forms, the document printing, like the pile and piles of receipt and statement, all the manual coding and categorization, all the chasing, all the back and forth that is involved into doing this manually for your finance team. And just saying this, my head is spinning already. This screams frustration and struggle. And this add unnecessary burden and pressure to your finance team, right? You have staff like spending hours and hours and hours, right, into tasks that nowadays can literally be done in a few clicks, right? And this prevent them from using that time more efficiently, and this literally stop them from adding greater value to your organization. So at the end, if you really want to have a significant and positive impact on your organization, you have to think about the processes that you have in place and how those processes serve your organization, right? And when we start identifying and isolating the processes that drag you down, right, you will see that credit card reconciliation and employee expense lead are generally one of those. Right, so now without further ado, I'm going to turn to Wendy to show the product in action so you can see how Sparkrock could help you modernize those processes.
Thank you, Gary. And Bree, I've just requested control of the deck. Perfect. All right. I don't seem to be able to move the deck, Bree.
Here, I can try and take over. Oh, we'll pull it back up. Good old tech.
Well, while we're waiting for the slide to come back up, I thought it was interesting as I reflected when I was preparing for this webinar. I thought about my 28-year career and how many expense reports I have actually filed myself. And I estimate I've probably filed about $1 million worth of expense reports over my 28-year career. And I've seen it all. I've done paper-based expense reports. I've lost receipts. I've been trying to ensure that when I track my mileage, that it's respecting the Canada revenue rules in regards to mileage or other policies that my organization might have. For example, how much I can spend on breakfast. I've also seen that many times the expense solution has been disjointed from the rest of the organization's systems. So the expense system I've seen kind of stands on its own outside of finance or outside of your HR payroll solution. And so what we want to demonstrate today is how our expense solution is completely integrated with the other experiences that your employees might expect. So the employee self-service is where we're going to start our demo off today. And there's many types of expenses that we're going to be looking at. So of course you have your corporate P card expenses. So I've used the corporate card, I've bought some things, and now the corporate card has been sent to the organization and I need to account for those expenses. There's also, of course, out-of-pocket expenses. So I've been to a conference and I bought some breakfast, for example. How do I get reimbursed for those? And of course, there's the mileage component to this. So traveling, whether you're always traveling to the same locations or if it's different every time, you're going to see how our solution is built to help you build efficiency in those processes. And we can even allow you to do a pre-approval of expense claims. So before the expense even takes place. So let me just share my screen. And let me just bring over my application. As I said, we're going to start from the employee's perspective. And Bree, can I just get a confirmation that my screen is being shared with the My Sparkrock interface?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we're starting off here from the employee self-service perspective. What is an employee going to see when they file their expenses? So here in the employee self-service, today, again, we are just focused on the expense claims, but if you had other components of our ecosystem, like HR, for example, you would have additional functions in the self-service area. And here we can see we have two buckets. We have expenses and we have claims. And so as I expand these, so these expenses are expenses that I'm currently still working on. I'm still adding expenses. I'm adding coding to them and ensuring that they're all accurate. Once I have them here, then we submit the expense claim. But let's just talk a little bit more before we do that about what we see here. So you can see actually that some of my expenses have this credit card icon. So that's the corporate purchase card. So these have been imported from the bank statement that you got for your corporate credit card. And it knows that based upon the card that was used for those expenses, it knows that I am responsible for these. And so they're here for me to reconcile. If I wanted to, and we'll come back to that. So let's first look at your out-of-pocket expenses. So I'm just going to click on New Expense. And the first thing we're going to be prompted by the system to do is choose an expense type. And so expense types will do a lot for you. For example, let me just, I'm going to do a meal here. So we're going to do a conference meal. And so you'll notice that once I select an expense type, we have our guidelines here. And so this can link out to your organization's policies around expenses, but also you can wrap each expense type in those policies. So for example, I can put a maximum amount of cost that this expense might be able to have. So for example, if I put in $20, it would tell me that the maximum allowable is $16. So the policy in this organization is breakfast cannot be more than $16. So it automatically defaults to the maximum allowable amount if I enter more. It can also require the inclusion of receipts. And so receipts, you can just simply grab them through the add button. Or if I'm on a mobile device, I can actually take the picture of the receipt and add it at that time or add it from my camera's photos. This also supports a drag and drop functionality. So taking it from a file and dragging it up into here to add your receipts. And you can have as many additional receipts as required. You'll see here that we're then asked to specify which tax. So depending on which jurisdiction you ate that breakfast in is going to determine that. And you can see that also the GL account has automatically been aligned here. And that's all driven through the expense type. And the last thing for me to do is tag which department. So this is our account sets, which is going to further define the expense by department or fund or other types of dimensions that you might have set up. And those are account sets. And to learn more about account sets, I highly recommend that you reach out and get a demo from Sparkrock, and we can tell you more about that. So with this information here, I've now created this out-of-pocket expense, and I'm just going to save it. And so we can see it. It's now here. We have our breakfast receipt, and it's all ready to be submitted as a claim. Next, I wanted to show you the mileage expense process. So I'm just going to, again, click on a new expense. And the expense type, I'm going to find my mileage. So for example, the first one I'm going to choose is what I'm calling the internal mileage. And so this allows you to set up predefined locations. So maybe I'll just call this trip A, for example. And you can see within here, we already have pre-configured from location to locations. So if there's common routes that your employees are taking, you can set up these from to variables and that already know the distance between each location. You can see here that I'm able to toggle whether or not this trip was a round trip or not. And again, you can set default settings in regards to taxes. And again, I'm going to choose an account set just for better reporting. And so now we have the mileage example here where it was a location, so it was set kilometers, but not always is that going to be relevant. In many cases, you may not have a to and from exact known location, and so in which case you can add your own. But while we're in here, you may have already noticed that the system is automatically tracking how much distance I have claimed for already this year. And so this is built in to accommodate the scenarios where a different rate applies after an X number of kilometers. So 5,000 kilometers in this example is what we're looking at. But the system is highly configurable, no matter what jurisdiction you're in, and the rules and policies that you might have. And I'll just make something up here. We're going to go pick up the pizza, and I'm just going to put in my quantity. So maybe this was 5 kilometers, and it was a round trip, and so we can see that the total amounts are being calculated here. All right, so we have an out-of-pocket expense, we have mileage expense with known variables, and we also have a mileage expense with a custom mileage amount, so not a location to location. Where I want to focus in now before we move to the next steps of our process is I want to talk about these P cards. So here we have our purchase cards. And so it's my responsibility as the owner of this card, I've been assigned this card to come in and code these items. And there are different ways to do this. You can just wait until the credit card comes in and start coding these transactions. Or if you're like me, you might, as I've made that purchase on my purchase card, maybe I'm creating the entry on my own right here so I don't lose anything. And so I have an example like that. And what I'm going to do, so we can see here we have the supplies, foods, and snacks, groceries for parent teachers interviews, and it was $125. And below here, we can see all the credit card transactions, and here we can see Safeway groceries for $125. So I had already entered that expense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reconcile that. I'm going to move all the data that I had already entered, and I'm going to select that. So this is the one I had already entered, and it asked me if I want to continue. So it's taking the data that I had already entered when I first created the expense, and it's now adding all the tagging, the receipts, as part of this reconciliation to the actual credit card detail that was imported. And so that it certainly can help speed this process up. It can help this not seem so erroneous at the end of the month where I've got all my credit cards and I need to code them. And once all those credit cards are coded, they will be ready to be submitted. So I'm going to purposely show you what this looks like. We're going to actually select all of these expenses. So I have some out-of-pocket expenses, I have some travel in regards to mileage, and I have these P card expenses, which I have already tagged and attached my receipts to. So I'm just going to click on Make a New Claim. And so when we make a new claim, we have some options here. First of all, I can have different types of claims. And so and these are configurable. And so maybe this is a monthly claim, for example, and you can give it a description. But right below this, I want to bring your attention to what we see just below this, where it says claim amount and reimbursable. So only $31.20 is reimbursable from this claim amount. And that's because the expenses of attached were paid by the peak purchase card. So I'm not going to get reimbursed for things that the organization has already paid for through the purchase card. So the system is smart and recognizes that and drives efficiency by allowing me to submit everything together. And so I'm just going to put in my employee comments. And as we look at this, we can see all of the expenses that are included in this claim. And if I wanted to remove any, I could delete them or detach them. If there was any issues with any, maybe the coding or it's missing something, it would be in red here and I would be able to clearly see any issues. And then below that, this is really quite unique to Sparkrock across all the different expense systems have seen and worked with, is it allows you to have visibility on the budget. So it keeps everybody accountable to your budget, not just your finance manager. And so you can decide as an organization, who do you want to make this available to? Maybe you don't make it available to all employees. Maybe you make it available just to the managers. But as you can see, it's looking at the different GLs and account sets that are used in this expense, and it's showing me the budgeted amount, how much am I requesting in this transaction, and this is a full encumbrance view. So commitments, so any commitments, so those are what we call purchase requisitions in our system. So if there's any purchase requisitions, encumbrances are purchase orders, and then we have the balance. So we can have complete visibility on where we are at with the budget right from this section. So again, driving accountability across your whole organization. And if you do allow it, there might be multiple approvers to choose from. The approval process is configured. It's going to allow you to configure multiple variables, so you can have the approval process drive by the type of claim that we saw here. For example, I might have a different approver on a travel claim versus a monthly claim, or whatever types you have here. It can drive a different approval experience. Also, though, by the GL and account sets that they're using. So the GL, you can have approvers for ranges of GLs, but also by the dollar value. So you might have, this person can approve under $500, but over that, now it has to go to a different set of approvers. So the system is going to manage that all for you. And I'm just going to submit the claim, and yes, submit. So now this has left from the employee's view. So if we look at their expenses, there's all those expenses are now submitted. And if we want to see where those are, we can view our claims. So employees have full transparency or full visibility on the status of their claims right from the time that they create them and send them off to approval. They're going to see the different statuses. And any that are completed means that the reimbursement has already been processed, and they can expect their payment if they haven't had it already. Okay. All right. So from here, I'm just going to put on my administration hat, and we'll move over to the admin side. And we'll talk a little bit more about those P cards and how they're configured and how they reconcile against themselves. And so that's very important. So let me just minimize this screen. And I'm going to bring over my administration interface. So here we are. I'm currently in the role of an accounts payable coordinator. You can see I have an actionable dashboard specific to claims, expense claims. I can see approved claims or any request to approve. But before we get to that, I want to talk about how the whole purchase card setup functions. So first of all, it starts at the vendor. And so the vendor is your Visa, your MasterCard, your whoever your purchase card is managed through. So here we have our corporate Visa. They're a vendor in our system. And a few things I want to point out here. First of all, one on the right, we can see their invoice type is purchasing card. Okay, so that is how these are to be managed. And as we scroll down, we're also going to see on here their default payments. So if your credit card, for example, is paid through an auto debit from your bank account, you would have that set up as your payment method. But the other important thing you're going to see here is the default GL. And so the default GL on this vendor is actually the purchase card clearing GL. So all purchase card transactions are going to go into this clearing account. And then as the employees are coding them and then submitting them through the process for approval, they clear against this GL. So you can clearly see which expense receipts or credit card transactions have not been reconciled. So that's your vendor piece. Okay. Now let's take a look at the purchase card. So I'm just going to bring up my purchase cards. And so this is part of your setup. Oops. Oops, sorry, 1 second here. I must need to be in a different role. My apologies. Okay, well, go to the accounting manager role here just for a moment. So you can see when we move our role centers that we're going to have different actionable dashboards. So let me just pull this up here. Okay, well, I might have to just skip that part, but I'll move on. So, but essentially what I was looking to show you was the in the system, every purchase card gets associated with a credit card number, and it knows which user that is. And so then what happens when your credit card statement comes in is you would use your purchase card journal, and we're just going to import that purchase card journal. So it's just as easy as, again, you can drag and drop, or you can go out and select those. So let me just find my credit card statement here, and I'm just going to drag and drop it on here. So this is my September credit card statement. I downloaded it from the bank, and then I'm importing it in. And so we can see the purchasing card number, and we can see who is the user that owns that card. So in this case, it's called Demo 1, which is my demo user. And we can see all of the charges, the description, as well as the amount. Okay, if there's any warnings, we're going to be able to see those right here. So I've reviewed this, and so I'm just going to process this. And it asked me if I want, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm going to say yes. And so they were all processed to a new invoice. So this invoice is going to be for the Visa company. So the corporate Visa, we can see the purchase invoices created here. After that, import. And so from here, then I would send this off for approval if we have an approval process, or I would just post it. When you're posting, you can do post previews and identify if there's going to be any concerns with your posting. And so this is telling me that I've already used this invoice number. So I'm just going to update my invoice number and go ahead and post this. Okay, so now that purchase invoice has been posted, and it's asking me if I want to open it. So we're going to just finish at that point. And what we're going to see on the employee side is if we come back to the employee self-service and we come into their expenses, we can see now those credit card charges that were on that imported statement are here for this demo user 1 to now code and send back to finance through the approval system, which will clear out that clearing GL. So let's just come back into our administration side and let's take a look at what that looks like from the approval process. So there, whoever is defined as the approver based upon the different rules that you may have set up is going to get the expense claim to approve. So here we can actually see we have the expense claim that we just submitted today. We can see here we have our breakfast. We have also the P card transactions on here. And to the left, we do have some intelligent warnings in regards to duplicate detection. So it's looking for duplicate expenses. And so, you know, for example, maybe there are sometimes legitimate reasons for duplicate expenses, like maybe they eat at the same restaurant and have the same meal every time, but it still is just a way for you to review it. And as you review these, you're going to be able to, on each line detail, we can see to the right the policy warnings. Is this an allowed amount? Is this distance verified? So this first mileage one, this is the location to location. And then we also have this, the one that was, I put in my own mileage distance. And we can see that the distance in that case is unverified. What else you're going to see at the line detail level is the ability to go right into the attachments. So right at the line detail, we are going to be able to see those attachments. And if we want to access any one of them, we just click on it and we can see it in line with the system, or you can click on it and download that receipt to your local downloads folder. Okay, but regardless, they are right at the line detail within this expense claim. And so when this expense claim is posted, then that is when it will, when I create my purchase document. So let's go ahead and approve this and we'll go through those other steps. So you can have multiple approvers. I'm going to go ahead and approve as an administrator so we can just move along with this process. And again, you are able to now create the purchase document. If there's any warnings in regards to tax calculations or anything like that, you will get your warning, as well as you'll get budget checking here as well. And so now we can see we have our purchase invoice. So it's taken the expense claim, moved it into a purchase invoice. But as we look at this, we can also update any of the elements in regards to the GL if we need to. So for example, maybe I need to tag this with a fund code. Once it's here and I'm ready to post it, I would just post this. I'm going to post that invoice. Okay. Oops. And I'm just going to change this to C. So in my practicing for the demo, I've used this vendor invoice posting code already. So let's just go ahead and post this. Okay, so now if we were to look at this this employee, and if they were to actually get paid now, if we were to pay this employee for that reimbursement, and we create this payment, all we're going to get is that 20 some dollars that they were owed. So I can't remember exactly how much it was. Here we go. It was $18.84 that they were to get for reimbursement, and they're an EFT set up as an EFT, so I'm going to go ahead and send this as an EFT for them. This would also, of course, show up when you prepare all of your payables in the payment journal. I'm just following this one expense all along. So once that the EFT has been generated, you then would send them a notification for their remittance. And last but not least, this is posted. Okay. So let's just kind of circle back on that Visa vendor. So let me come back to our Visa vendor. One moment here, please. So coming into our vendors. And come into our Visa vendor. Okay, so if you recall, I said the magic is here in the default GL account. So this is the clearing account. So we'll be able to see the ins and outs of that clearing account. And so actually, let me just do this. I'm going to just go to the vendor ledger entries. Okay, here is today, but we're going to see the ins and outs of those entries. So let's just take a look at this. So here we can see the invoice on the P card invoice. And then we can see that it's clearing out through the expense that has been submitted by the employee. So those will cancel each other out. But furthermore, there are other tools to also check the status of your purchase cards. And that is in the what we call the purchase card register. Okay, and so here's the one from today, for example. And so I can look at all unassigned expenses. So this means that we've imported that purchase card. They've been distributed to these employees in their employee self-service, but they have not yet coded them, right? They haven't coded them. If we look at another one, so this is one that I created yesterday as I was preparing for the demo. So here we can see, oh, only Jennifer hasn't coded her expenses yet. So you know who to follow up with, and you know which exactly from each statement imported, which transactions still need to be reconciled. All right, now, before I let you go, when we went into the employee self-service and we were doing our expenses, I talked about expense types. And expense types are highly configurable. So for example, if we look at our internal, use our kilometer, our mileage one, you can see in here that we are able to set the default GL. You can have default vendors as well on different expense types. You can set the rules in regards to tax treatment, as well as units of measure. As we continue down, we can see the expense claims and the type. So is this a distance or a general? And here's where we have the location to location quantity. We're also able to determine here whether a receipt is required, or maybe a receipt is required based upon a minimum threshold. So a very high level overview. Let me just, can we just come back to the slide deck, please, Bree, and I'll just summarize what we saw here. Perfect, thank you. All right, so as we think about that purchase card workflow, this is a very good visual to help you wrap your mind around it. So first of all, we import that credit card statement from your bank. When we get that credit card statement in Sparkrock, it pushes out those transactions to the employee self-service for them to reconcile. And that's what's happening on the left. On the right, it's creating the invoice so you can pay your credit card bill and pay it on time. So when those employees are finished coding their expenses, they submit them. When it's approved and that purchase document is created, it clears out the GL, that clearing GL, and gives you full visibility on which transactions have yet to be reconciled. Thank you so much for viewing that, and now we'll hand it back over to Bree and Gary for some questions.
Feel free to start writing your questions in the chat or Q&A. I did pop a chat up. If today's session has you thinking at all, maybe you're thinking about ERP, finance software, whether that is in the short term or in the next year or two, feel free to reach out and book a meeting with our team. For now, I'll have Gary help answer two questions. One is was actually pre-submitted, which is lovely. We are currently using Concur. I'm wondering if you are able to replace solutions like Concur or Expensify.
Thank you, Bree. That's a great question. And that's a question that we actually have very often, that we see very often. And the short answer to that question is yes. All the functionalities and capabilities that you have in Concur, we're able to have them. You're able to replace that with the Sparkrock functionality. But I'll even argue that it's even a much superior solution, right? Why? Because this is your ERP system, right? This is not a third-party application that you need to connect to, that you need to integrate with, that you need to map your data with, right? It's all into one application. And this actually allows you to unlock a functionality that is extremely important that you will never have through any third-party solution, which is the budget checking, right? So your manager will now be able to know in real time before they approve anything that they do have the budget for it, or that they are within their budget. So I would say that is huge. And you will end up actually with a far more superior solution than what you have with Concur.
I was muted. Look at that. I did the same thing. We have two questions that were in the chat that I figure we can also chat about here. Is Sparkrock compatible with Cephi?
Right. So Sparkrock has open API capabilities, right? So any third-party solution with open API will be able to connect with Sparkrock. So we're able to have those connections as long as the solution do have those API capabilities. So Cephi will fall into this category, I believe.
And last one for now, is it compatible with Microsoft GP?
Oh yeah, I saw that one from the chat. I actually respond to it, and I wanted to actually address that as well. So thank you for bringing that one up here. So just for clarity, right? So Sparkrock is a full ERP solution. So what you have seen during this demonstration is just a fraction of what Sparkrock can do, right? A fraction of our capability. And Sparkrock is actually a natural and logical upgrade path recommended by Microsoft for Microsoft GP for nonprofit organization, right? And GP is now a legacy system, right? That is being discontinued by Microsoft. I believe the official date is in 2028 or 2029. I'm not too sure, but this is in the process of being fully discontinued by Microsoft. So if you are using GP, now is actually the right time for you to start planning around moving to a modern SaaS solution, right? We had several webinars with Microsoft about upgrading from GP to Sparkrock, right? But I highly recommend you to reach out to our team, right, to discuss this. I'll be happy to sit with you to go over your requirements, your needs, and go from there and see what that upgrade path looks like. You're on mute again?
Yet again, I'm doing great today. As we start closing out, I'm going to pop a quick poll up. Let us know what else you'd like to learn from Sparkrock. We have lots of different topics that we can chat about, whether it's finance or even HR reporting. Feel free to answer that poll. I'll send this in the email as well, so you can give us more context. And I want to thank everyone for coming and joining today. We appreciate everyone joining. And as always, you can reach out to us either through connect@sparkrock.com or through our website, www.sparkrock.com.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.